Okay, we're still doing Siman Kuf Chaf Halacha Aleph. Last time we started talking about which materials do or do not need Tevillas Keilim. We sort of just did some of the more basic things then. Particularly, we spoke about that metal needs Tevillah, that's Min HaTorah. Glass needs Tevillah with Rabbanan, because you could melt it and turn it back into new glass. Those are like the basic things we talked about last time. Okay? Now we're going to move on to some other things. And the first is, when we say Midrabanan, the Chacham included glass, because Kinish Tabu Yeshnam Takana, such a thing. Were they specific to that thing, specific to glass, or does that mean to include any material that would have that property? Kinish Tabu Yeshnam Takana, would Chazal include that in their Takana also? That, of course, is very negated to plastic, which is a taka shayla nachman about it, because plastic also has that same property. Especially when we understood it with glass. But it has the same property as glass in that way. So when the Gemara says, does that mean to say anything that will have that property will be chayv in tiyum u'drabanan? Okay, that's what Dainwai says. And some others say, it says it has the same property as glass, so it's chayv in tiyum, chayv in tefillah. Many other achronim, lots and lots of other achronim say no, it's not true. When Chazal said, they said it specifically for glass. The reason behind it was chinish tabi yeshem takana, but they only meant the takana on the specific they said it, which was on glass. They didn't say it for other things, and therefore plastic is not chayv in tefillah. Even Dayan Weiss, when he says it, I don't remember if some of the others do the same thing, but when Dayan Weiss says it, he brings that there are others who disagree with me, so you should do tefillah without a bracha. He says not to make a bracha. There's a little bit in the Dr. Tshuva about it. Of course, he's not talking about plastic. He was before plastic. But he has his own material. And he says there's this new material that you could make it back again. So there's that's a machlokes nachman. Okay, we don't have time for it, but there's a possible raya. I don't know if you remember we talked about last time the Gemara's case of Mana de Marda. Okay, which we said is this thing made out of dirt and whatever, a bunch of things like that, where you just mush them together and dry it out and make it into a kli. Kenzime is arrived from there, that in fact things that can be recreated do not need tefillah, because l'chara, if the way we understood it, the way we imagine what that kli is, and we have a pretty picture on here, up there before here, what it could look like, that would be kli also chinish tabi yeshem takana. The Gemara says that right next to the din the glass is chayv in tefillah. So if that's not chayv in tefillah,
well, what is it? What is that material called? Adamo maybe? What is that?
It's remember from last time the picture of the mausoleum, the picture of the house. It's dirt and dung mixed together and just let it dry out.
Is that what the thing called?
What?
What is it right? What is it right made out of?
It's made out of dirt. It made out of things that are not chayv in tefillah. The Gemara says it's not chayv in tefillah because it's not metal. So the question is, but that is kinish tabi yeshem takana. You can fix it. You're making something that has no name. Why doesn't it have a name? It's clear. One of the Martha. That's what they want to call it. One of the Martha. We had a name for it, whether that's right or not. But the Gemara says it's not chayv in tefillah. And then right around it, the Gemara also says that things that chinish tabi yeshem takana are chayv in tefillah. So Kenzime, it's right. Okay, that's not so important for us. Okay, now within this, what Dayan Weiss said that chinish tabi yeshem takana means anything. Whatever you'll find in the material that chinish tabi yeshem takana, that thing is chayv in tefillah. If that's the way he wants to say that mamela plastic is chayv in tefillah. So I have a question then, which is at least in the modern era, I don't know if it was always like this, but paper and cardboard have the same property. Okay, we recycle paper and cardboard the same way we recycle glass. Okay, remember we talked about last time. Chinish tabi yeshem takana means is you could melt it down and start it again. It doesn't mean you could fix it. You can't repair it. You could melt it down and start it again. Okay, that's what you do with paper and cardboard also. You break it back into its fibers and you make a new piece of paper out of it. Okay, so if I don't know if they could do that 100 years ago. I don't know if that was a common thing to do, but we do that now. It happens all the time. So should we say, according to Dayan Weiss, that when the Gemara said chinish tabi yeshem takana, it didn't mean specific just to glass. It meant that anything with that property, you chayv in tefillah. So does that mean that if I have something paper or cardboard, again, I'm not talking about whether it's disposable. Put that on the side. That's not our shayla for today. But let's say I had a real kli that was made out of that thing. So would we say that mamela should be chayv in tefillah according to him? Because chinish tabi yeshem takana also. So is that what you mean?
I just want to point out that paper, you're reducing it to a much more basic entity than by glass.
Okay, so I don't know if that is or is not true. Probably the answer is along the line, something like that. Okay, that's like a panam chadashas. Okay, you make
it's completely right. Glass is going to be like small, tiny pieces of glass. When you recycle it, paper, in order for them to recycle it, they have to completely obliterate any semblance to paper.
Okay, because it goes back into its fibers, back into the original cellulose fibers. Okay, and maybe that had something to do with that. Okay, but I don't think talking about that. Maybe that's the answer. It's like it's so much beyond that. The Gemara doesn't say that there's an end to what this thing is. Okay, maybe there is an end. Maybe there's maybe a right from a Tevillas. Tevillas talks about that. Such things like a panam chadashas that even I could recreate it, but it's like as if it started from scratch. It's like back to such an elemental form. Okay, it's not something to get to us because, as I said to you, most poskim say that you don't have plastic, which is what most of us do. We don't have plastic, and not like this sheet of direct. Okay, let's go on to a more deeper and more serious question for us, and that is like this. You know, we roundaboutly coming back to something we mentioned last time, which is aluminum and other what we call new metals, which is to say, the Torah says 6 metals that are chayv in tefillah. Okay. Zav, Kesef, and Chayshas, Bars, Abdul, and Forest. The Torah gives us these 6 metals that are chayv in tefillah. And the Gemara doesn't say 6 metals. The Gemara says Kleimat Chasam are metal is. You look at Shulchan Aruch, it says Klei Sudish Amatchas. It just says metal. Okay, it doesn't list off the specific ones. Okay, so the impression we have is that metal can be chayv in tefillah. Okay, but on the other hand, there's a number of Bechronim, you'll hear their names soon, who says, I don't understand. He says, the Torah specifically tells you 6 metals of chayv in tefillah. They call it Shisha Ksub Haboim Ke'echad. The pasuk tells you 6 specific things of chayv in tefillah. So why do you think anything else is? If the Torah says you 6, this and this and this and this, so that means there's not anything else. Why should we include other metals in that? Okay, so now this is a. If I use the word modern shiloh because, as I mentioned to you last time,
it doesn't say the word 6 though.
No, it says this metal needs tefillah, this one and this one and this one.
Everything else, it's like kidneys and everything else. You know.
That what?
It falls under the same Gedarim as these.
No, so if the Torah would say one metal,
if it's 6, then you have a point.
I don't mean that. I mean, if the Torah would say metal, if the Torah say silver needs tefillah, we say anything that's diamond to silver is also. We say just like this is chayav also, so too this is also. When the Torah is specific, say only these things need it, then we say that's the one that it meant. Why would we say anyone that's diamond to
no plastic around it? No.
So the person couldn't think of a word that would be more generic. Couldn't think of a word that maybe. Okay. You know, he probably could have. He's saying it would have been a little bit funny for us. Okay, so maybe that could be the answer. Maybe that's what it is. Okay, so the
question: were there other metals at that time?
Right. So if you remember last time, now you'll understand better what I did last time. Last time I went through a whole bunch of different metals and showed you how each one of them was around. The older metals were either combinations of metals that chayv in tefillah, metal. It was roiv of a metal that's chayv in tefillah, which is to say, the things that people had until 100, 200 years ago were all things that would be obviously chayv in tefillah. Okay? They were made of, let's say, a mixture of 75% this and 25% things that didn't need tefillah. So those need tefillah anyhow. There weren't shilas about these things because there were no metals around that were a question whether they should or should not be chayv in tefillah. Okay? Now that we make things that are completely made out of aluminum or chromium or other certain metals, we'll talk about some examples soon. Those other metals, that they didn't exist. Okay? We have something that's 100% made out of aluminum. What do we do with that thing? Okay? That's why I was trying to bring out last time. The metals that people were using, bronze, okay, it's a thing that's chayv in tefillah. There was no question for them that was chayv in tefillah. Okay? They weren't using these kind of things that we have, to my understanding. So one of the things that people bring with, I think that's this coming slide, is a Teretz Yisrael. Okay, the Teretz Yisrael, as you know, is Pirush HaMishnayos, has a hakdama to say the Taharas. Okay, and in his hakdama that he's looking at the din of Tumah Torah, that only certain things need tefillah. So he says there are 9 things that need tefillah. Okay, you'll see there are 9 things that need tefillah, and he says the group of things that need tefillah that's called matchos. Okay, so he says if you look at the Gra. I didn't break up the Rosh Hashanah. Tachas or Rabbeinu Eliyahu, because in his hakdama to say the Taharas, the Gra says that there are 6 metals, and they are Zohar, Kesef, Nechoshes, Bars, Abdul, and Forest. That's the 6 that are chayv in tefillah. Okay, he says that's what the Gra says. But the Teretz lived in the middle 1800s. Okay, but he says, but Lamaisa is, I don't think so. I think that all metals. He says Lamaisa there are new metals around coming out nowadays. He says, and I think they're all included. Okay, so. We're going to try to understand he's saying that no, taka, they're all included. So the question is, okay, well, what happened? Well, I said there are 6 psukim that say in them. The pasuk says these 6 things are chayav in tefillah. So what is it? Is it 6 things or is it everything? Okay. So I'm going to go through 3 possible answers to that question. Okay. The first is this answer is from Lipschitz. Okay, those you know who he is. Yeah. I didn't think I should call him that, but that's yes. Okay. This. Mashgiach tells. Okay, he said like this. He says, nowadays we think of things of metals with a periodic table, and the periodic table has now, as of recently, if I got it correctly, 118 different things, and we judge things by that's how we classify the metals. He says, but not necessarily. He says we don't necessarily have to be so look at it so scientifically, and it could be that the 6 metals that are listed in the Torah are really 6 groups of materials. Okay, that let's say the word zahav may not only include the one material that's listed on the periodic table, whatever number it is, that's called gold. What?
What else would that go?
So I'll give you here in a second. Okay, so the it could be, okay, in particular to aluminum. So he wants to say maybe aluminum is from the Torah's perspective is in the same is in the same group as tin is. Okay, now you may not know this, but till the Aruch World War II, I don't know exactly, but Aruch World War II, when you had a pan that you wanted to cover with like a thin piece of metal, or you had leftovers you wanted to wrap up, you wrapped it up with tin. Okay, it was called tin foil because it was made out of tin. Then they figured out how to make aluminum really cheap and really easily, so they switched. They stopped making tin foil and they made aluminum foil, right? I mean, you still know what people call tin foil because that's what it used to be. Okay, so I was like, when you think about it, you call it tin foil? So when you think about it, so in other words, there are similarities between them. That there's a reason why if they switch from this to this, became aluminum foil because they have certain properties in common. So maybe when it says these 6 things, the word when it says bedil, and bedil means tin, aluminum is in there also. That also means aluminum. Okay, maybe this is a long one. Moshe was saying. Okay, what would be the pshat in that? What would be the pshat? Maybe we would take in the pshat is that when the Torah said there's something very unusual about this pasuk. Okay, I didn't put the pasuk up this week. But the pasuk in the Torah, okay, there's 13 words in that pasuk. Okay, you know how I know there's 13 words in it because the first word is ach. Okay, and then it lists off 6 metals. But it says ach es hazav, es hakesef, es hakosef, es hanachoshes, es habarzel, es habadil, es harifaris. Okay, to each one of those metals it says es. Okay, there are 6 times it says the word es in that pasuk. Okay, which is awfully verbose, and like he just said, es is the rabbis. Okay, so maybe when the Torah is saying that, it's to be miramas to you that these. What? So the Gemara has a drasha for the ach. This we'll say in the scene. There is a drasha for the ach. Yeah, there's a drasha from the ach. There's a drasha from the ach. But the es is maybe, according to this, would be on the same to be marveled that these things are broader than just the very narrow, specific things like this. Okay. Now, the downside to saying an answer like this is that it's leaving us like flapping in the wind over here. And we really need Rishonim to give us direction as to, okay, what's the category? What does it mean that this category includes more than the thing what it is? We need big people to be saying chromium is in and titanium is out, right? And so if each one is a little broader of a category, well, what's in each category? What's in the category of this and that one? It's not such an obvious thing, which one, you'll see in a second, it's not so obvious which one is in the category, which is not in the category. So if we're saying that these are categories, and there's really more to each one than by itself, a Thoros doesn't just include lead, it includes broader things than that also. Okay, well, what does it include? Okay, what's in there? It was sort of left hanging, that's a weakness in it. It's because every time I come up with something new, is it included or is it not included? Okay, so to me...
Next question?
Yes.
About metals in general?
Yes.
Like aluminum, those are found naturally, or those are produced? Like how?
It's an element. It's in the ground.
Right.
So the chachma was to get it out and to get it to.
During the times of Tanakh, they weren't able to
make anything out of it. Right. They could have picked it up on the ground, but it didn't mean anything to them. They couldn't do anything to it. Okay. Now, to me, I was looking and trying to say, okay, how would we approach to divide the metals? So when a scientist, when they make the periodic table is divided by how many atomic orbitals it has, and how many electrons it has, and how many valence electrons it has. Okay, so that's their way of looking at it that we get that the Torah doesn't divide things like that. But we're not expected to divide material by how many valence electrons there are in the outer shell. Okay, that's not how we would group metals. We totally don't.
That changes the properties of it.
Right. So what we expect the Torah to do is
glass. The same way they're looking at glass to see whether it's considered Keilim or metal. Is shared property.
So we expect from the Torah would look at it as what are the properties that a regular people see.
How many valence electrons?
I understand that, but we're not going to just categorize by that. We're going to look at what are the properties that us humans can see. We just look at the thing, we see certain properties about it, and those properties will help us say this is the same or they're not the same. Okay, so I decided on totally my own guess. Okay, 6 properties. Okay, that you can have about a metal, okay, that will help us in saying these are or are not in the same group, okay? These are objective properties. One is a color, okay? When I say color, I'll just use it as an example. Gold and copper have very unusual colors to them, okay? Unusual meaning that they're very different than all the other metals. All the other metals have a grayish, whitish color to them. They're roughly the same, not exactly. They're roughly the same. And gold and copper have a very unusual color to them, okay? They're different than the other ones, okay? And then there's a change of color. When certain metals get exposed to the air, they change colors. Like iron rusts, okay? Silver tarnishes. Gold doesn't change colors. You can leave gold outside, it doesn't change colors, okay? Again, it's a property that a regular person looking at this and says, oh, this is an unusual one, okay? The density, which is how heavy something is. You'll see how that comes in a second. Not how heavy it is, I mean, per every cup worth, how heavy that thing is, okay? Hardness, okay? How easy it is to work with it and how much it holds its shape. Its melting point, which has to do with working with it. Most people don't think about melting points, but melting points, which is to say, if you want to work with a metal, you want to make. So if you want to make something out of a metal, the melting point is an important factor for you. And lastly, if it's ferromagnetic, which is to say, if you touch it to a magnet, does it get attached to it? Okay, does it we would regular people would call that magnetic, but it really means the way it means that it attaches to a magnet is ferromagnetic. Okay, so now I'm going to show you now a chart. I'm going to show you the 6 metals from the Torah, okay, and 6 metals that are what we call new metals, or these newer metals, listed all of them by those properties that I have over here, okay. Here's the properties for those 12 things, okay. Each one of them, in some of the categories I just showed, yes, let's say color. So copper and gold have an unusual color, and 4 of them have have changed colors, okay. And the last colors are they ferromagnetic, okay. So all these properties, okay. Now, I'm going to make life easier for you. I'm going to compare you some of the metals to see if it doesn't make sense to you, okay? But I'm going to make it less overwhelming than 1,000 little numbers here. Okay, so to me, it seems to me that it would be easy to say that there are 2 that are easy comparisons, and they're easily fit into what the Torah says, okay? The first is that nickel and iron, okay? Because nickel and iron, except that iron rust, that's one unusual thing, but you see the other properties of them are very similar to each other, okay? The difference in the density, the hardness is measured by a thing called, I don't know what it's called. There's a name to how they measure these things, okay? I didn't think that Chazal measured things with a Mohs hardness. What's it called? There's a name to how it's called hardness. Yeah, Mohs hardness scale. But Lamaisa, that scale is reflective of the truth. Okay, so 4 and 4.5 are close enough to each other. In that scale, just for your curiosity, everything is rated from 1 to 10. 10 being a diamond. Okay, so 4 and 4.5, everything's rated. All materials. Okay, so this tells us that these 2 materials are pretty similar. So even though nickel didn't exist, people didn't use nickel in those times. But if the Torah says. Barzel is chayiv in Tevillas. Nickel, what we would call nickel and Barzel, is close enough that we would say es ha Barzel means es l'ravas is ha nickel. Okay, so and then another one, zinc and tin. Okay, zinc is actually nowadays very used a lot. A little bit it existed in those times. Okay, zinc and tin very similar. I know that the melting points look very different, but they're really not. Okay, in a relative sense, both of those numbers, these are Celsius. Those numbers are close enough that. Those are Celsius numbers. Those are close enough that a person working in a regular fire can melt them easily. Okay, not like some other metals that you need super hot furnaces. This is a regular furnace. You could do this. Okay, so these 2, to me, that zinc, that tin, Rabbis is a zinc, and what did I say the other one? Barzel, Rabbis is and nickel is pretty easy. Those are easier. Okay, but also the 3 other ones where it's 4 other ones where it's not so clear. Okay, aluminum and tin. That was Revolution's idea. He said, yeah, aluminum and tin is the same thing. Okay, so you tell me. You tell me, the hardness is okay, similar, melting point not so good, the densities not really close at all. They're not, in other words, tin is much heavier than aluminum is. They have similar colors. They're both not magnetic, but it's not a great comparison. What I'm going through is to show you is that we need hadracha to know which one is or is not. And the first two, it was pretty straightforward. We don't need anyone to tell us that those things are similar enough to each other that they could be included in that group. But is this one the same? And here's another one. Chromium and tin. Okay? Look at chromium and tin. Well, they're about as dense as each other. Their melting points are way off the chart from each other. Okay? Chromium melts at 2,000 to 1,900 degrees Celsius. You know what I mean? That means that you can't work with chromium in your house. Okay? You can't do it in a regular, and it's much harder. Okay? So those are the same? Maybe yes. Maybe they're not the same. Okay, platinum and gold. Okay, both of them are considered very chashuv. Okay, platinum and gold have what they have in common. What they particularly have in common is their specific gravity. Okay, their hardness. Which is to say, is gold is denseness. I'm sorry, not hardness. I'm sorry. Denseness. Their denseness. Their specific gravity. Gold is particularly heavy, particularly dense. Okay, it's more dense than every single other element that there is out there. Okay, which is say, when you see, okay, most of you don't watch movies, but when you watch a movie and the guy's walking out with bars of gold, it's not shaykh. Okay, a bar of gold weighs thousands of pounds. You can't just walk out with a bar of gold. Okay, it's super dense. Okay, so platinum has that property. Gold has a very unusual property that it doesn't change color. It keeps its beauty, but also it's they're much more dense than anything else. Platinum has that, but everything else, its hardness is similar, close enough, but it's not great. And of course, it's missing this one huge thing, which is gold has a very unusual color to it. Okay, gold has a look to it. You look at gold; it's different than all the metals. And platinum is more like a regular metal color, okay? like a silverish, grayish.
Why can we be combining for aspirations for metals?
And say why?
So it doesn't look like gold, but it might look like silver.
Because you're just saying some of the pages. I spent a lot of time looking at my chart. I spent a lot of time looking at stressing what is it comparable to. I'm showing you.
Just because the color doesn't look like gold doesn't mean it doesn't look like silver or tin. So
I don't think I went through.
You want to mix and match.
It's shiny.
So I went through. No, wait, hold the side of for a second. I went through the charts to try to say which each one of these match up to. I'm showing you the best choices that I can come up with. Maybe I come up with a better choice, but I try to come up with the best choices. Now it could be what he said. Maybe the side shovel.
I'm not saying a specific choice.
Yeah, a side shovel.
Right.
Say,
mix and match. The platinum is like gold in its properties, like silver in those properties.
So side shovel should have that. Oh, yesh by this and yesh by this. Okay, so if you want to say that,
then you can use wood and the Keilim and Zevel, and you can make anything.
In other words, what I was about to say was, which is, these kind of things, we need hadracha for this. This is not for us to sit here and figure out, do they have a sound? The David Meshuggah came up with 6 ideas here of how they're comparable. Right, we need some direction on this thing. So you want to say that when the Torah said 6, it means 6 groups. So that's a plausible idea, and for some things it's pretty straightforward. We easily see how it is, but not that. I'm trying to show you how it's not so easy to tell you that I need a shachi to tell me, okay, this is how we compare the metals to each other, okay? Here's the last one, titanium and iron. They're sort of similar, okay? But the big difference is that iron rusts, and iron is ferromagnetic, and titanium is not, okay? So it's a shvach.
There's no corrosion at all by titanium?
To my understanding. It does not. Thank you. Okay, so this first possibility is that the Torah gives us 6 metals. It really doesn't mean 6 metals, it means 6 groups of metal. And it's possible that the broadness of those groups includes certain things that we live with, but it leaves us hanging, not knowing how to say, well, which one's included and which one's not. So maybe the Torah meant to include aluminum but not titanium. How am I supposed to know? Okay, so how are we supposed to know what we're supposed to include around? So we're left hanging. We may have the answer, but we don't know really how to develop it till yet. Okay. The next is from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. It's very rumors in the Torah Shulchan I said to you before him. And he says like this. Rabbi Yaakov asks a question. He says, I told you this Gemara last week that, what's the person's name? Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef came and he wanted to title this one of the Marda. Okay, which, the way Rashi learns is it's made out of dirt. There's other shatim in it, but let's say, like Rashi, it's made out of dirt. So Rabbi Yaakov says, and the Gemara says back to him, no, klei matcha samurim b'Torah. Okay, what was he thinking? The Torah says 6 metals. Mona the Martyr is not one of those. It's not even close to one of those things. What on earth was he thinking, okay, when he said that this thing should be chayav in tefillah? What was he dreaming of, okay? What was he thinking when he said that this thing should be chayav in tefillah? So Yaakov says, obviously, he understood, he knew that the pasuk was lav dafka. Okay, when the pasuk says these metals, it doesn't mean only these things are chayav in tefillah. The terrorist really means anything is chayav in tefillah. Anything that's blank is chayav in tefillah. Okay, now, what the blank is, we could fill in. Okay, we could say is, what the blank is that anything that's chinish taviyesh and takana. Maybe that's what the blank is. That these things are chinish taviyesh and takana. Or we could have said the blank is, if Yaakov tries to talk about this, the others look at it. So maybe the blank is anything that's makabel tumah is chayav tefillah. Rabbi Yaakov has a whole discussion whether Israel is not chayav tefillah. Maybe whatever's chayav tefillah is a Torah meant to include it. But this is saying is, when the Torah says these 6 metals, it doesn't mean these 6 things. It means is anything that's in the category that's close to these things is chayav in tefillah. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef thought that it was mamish anything, even his mother the Marza, to which the Gemara says no, klei machkas samor b'Torah. So Rabbi Yaakov says the Gemara was not answering him that no, you don't know what you're talking about. There's only 6 metals. The Gemara's answering was you made it too broad, but you thought it includes everything. It's too broad. It only includes matchas. So now to come back to it, to say all it includes is matchas. No, it only includes matchas. It does not even include this. The next line of the Gemara does not include this. This is only the Rabbanan. So it only includes matchas. So this answer is saying is not that there are really 6 things that are chayiv, but each one of those 6 things is something bigger than itself. The bedil means more than just 10. It means a little bit broader than that also. But no, it means this 6 is to teach you all matchas is chayiv in tefillah. Okay. If you want to make understand that better, or to hear more of a riot to it, if we could say, is in Masechtas Keilim, okay, there are 4 prakim that talk about the tumah of metal Keilim. Okay, the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th parak talk about the Keilim that are chayiv in tefillah. You know that in those 4 prakim, it says the word matnas a zillion times, as you can imagine. Okay, it doesn't once say zav and kesef and nechoshes and barasav bedivul and forest, which doesn't tell you that these dinim are for these 6 things. It just says matkas. It keeps repeating it again and again. That the things are matkas. There's a no. It's I don't believe as a description of the military doesn't use that. But the Rambam, the first halach in Hilchos Keilim, says that similar to what we saw before in the Torah Yisrael, there are this many Keilim that could be makabel toma. He says, and the metals, all metals are makabel toma, like it says, achas is obas hakosef. Okay, he's quoting the Sifri in this week's parsha. Parshas Chukaz. He's quoting a Sifri in this week's parsha that says, it says, you know, how do we know that all metals are chayiv in tefillah? Because it says, achas is avas hakosef. It doesn't even bother quoting the whole pasuk. Achas is avas hakosef. In other words, the Sifri says that, that's the Rambam, the Mishnah say that those psukim, those 6 things from the psukim, includes all metals. Okay, sometimes included. Now, so we don't have to figure out, is titanium like this metal or is it like this metal? Really different. Metal is metal. Okay, which is what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, what? That's it. Greg, I'll come back 1 second. Okay? But the Gemara says, klei machkas samor b'Torah. The Gemara says, klei machkas samor b'Torah. So, and that's giving over a feeling that those 6 things they're not specific at all. It's a way of telling us metal Keilim. Okay? Maybe if we were really smart, we'd figure out why the Torah needs 6 examples to tell us all metal Keilim. Maybe you look back at my chart and say, oh, each one is to teach you that even if it's missing this element and this element, okay? So, if someone would be very smart, they'll sit and study my chart all day and figure out what it means. Okay, but it means all the metals. Okay? So, this is not the etzem. It's not answering the question. It's showing you that the question was wrong. You're not telling me, you're not explaining to me why the Torah says 6 and mean everything. I'm not telling you why, but I'm going to prove to you that the Torah really means everything else. Okay? So it's just avoiding, if I could use the word, it's avoiding the question. It's not the first was trying to answer the question. Each one means a little bit broader than itself. And this is saying that, no, all 6 just mean everything. Okay, now. So the last thing we have to know is just, okay, so what did that mean now? What does matkas mean? Now, we saw last time, I told you last time, Rashi in the Parshas Ve'era, okay, that explains what that word means. Okay, on the pasuk that says umotoloi nitach harza. Okay, so Rashi's second shot is nitach is the same. In this understanding is the same word as matechas. Okay, the same church as word matechas. Rashi says there means that it liquefies and it pours. Okay, so umotoloi nitach harza means is the bara, the frozen ice that was up there in the sky, did not melt and come pouring down to the ground as you would have expected. Okay, that's Rashi's second shot over there, and it brings rayas from Psukim in I think it was Yecheskel, but that's what the word means. That's used for metal the same way. There in Yecheskel, to answer what Levi said, in Yecheskel, the word not the word mateches, but the word nitach and metal are very associated with each other. Okay, not the word mateches like as in a noun, as a verb. Okay, anyhow, so if we say like that, if we say like Rashi says, then we have a problem. Because if it means anything that could liquefy and pour, then it includes plastic also. Okay, it includes maybe even glass also. Okay, so we know that that's not true. What is it? I don't know. I looked at nothing, but I don't know about limestone. But the plastic and glass might qualify for that also. So probably most people would assume it's like the last line of the Torah Yisrael. Excuse me. Torah Yisrael says. He says. Call hanirkat the patish, rikui pachim, nikra matchles. Anything that you could flatten out with a hammer and make into thin strips is called matchles. In English, we call that malleability. Okay, which is in fact a description of metals. When a scientist nowadays would describe what we call metals, not what a scientist calls metals, what we call metals is that they're malleable. Okay, which is to say, you can hammer them out and flatten it. You can't take wood and bang with a hammer and flatten it out and make strips out of it. It doesn't work. Okay, but metals have that property, and that describes all those things that I put up on the chart beforehand, all those 12 things that I pointed to, the 6 in the Torah and the 6 not in the Torah, all have this common property. So we'd say, someone's going to write in, when you write, your Gemara on Taurus, when you write your own fate, Yerushalmi, then you'll write in like this, that if the 6 things says, this is like this, and what do they have? It's it's Nikra Patish Rikui Pachim, and therefore that's what the Torah means to include when it says metals. Okay, so 2 answers we said so far. Okay. Third answer. So the first answer said is, I'm going to answer your question. There are 6 metals, and each one is a little broader than you think it is, includes a lot of things. The second answer was, I don't know why, but 6 metals, somehow we Chazal knew that it means all metals that are in the world. I don't know how, but somehow the Torah had to say 6, and somehow it means it, and that's what it means. Okay, the third answer, Ramosha says, he says this is not, the first answer I'm going to answer it, second was I'm going to prove you that you're not asking the right question. I don't know why, but I'm going to prove you wrong. And Moshe says, you are right. It's true. It's true when the Torah says here, there are 6 metals of Keilim and Tevillas. It's true. There are only 6 of them. He says, how can you believe the Torah would say 6 metals? And it means more than that. Of course. There are only 6 metals of Keilim and Tevillas. He says, that's the truth. It's not the truth. He says, but aluminum is Keilim and Tevillas Midrabanan. He says, just like glass is Keilim, because it's Kinish Dabu Yeshan Takana. He says, so aluminum has that same property also. So if glass is Chayv and Tiyum D'Rabbanan, so aluminum is Chayv and Tiyum D'Rabbanan also. He says, so it's like not Chayv, it's like not Chayv with D'Raisa. It's Chayv with D'Rabbanan, so you make a bracha on it, regular Torah like anything else, but it's just not Chayv with D'Raisa. There's some nafkaminas, something being only Chayv with D'Rabbanan. He says, but it's not Chayv with D'Raisa. It's only Chayv with D'Rabbanan. So the answer to the question is, you're right. The question is, it's 100% true. You're really only 6 things of Chayv and Tiyum. Aluminum is not written in the pasuk. It's not Chayv and Tiyum. Now, that's a fine answer. It's a fine way to look at things. But we have a problem. Okay? Because that answer seems to dovetail exactly with what I told you before from Dayan Weiss, which is, Dayan Weiss said that when the Gemara says, Kinish Dav Yeshem Takana, it doesn't only mean that glass is Chayv and Tevillah. It means anything with that property, Kinish Dav Yeshem Takana, is also Chayv and Tevillah. He says it for what? To say that plastic is Chayv and Tevillah, because plastic also has this property of Kinish Dav Yeshem Takana. So Ramosha, who's saying is that aluminum has that property as Chayv and Tevillah. The Gemara didn't have aluminum. So what did it mean is, when the Gemara says, whatever is Kinish Dav Yeshem Takana is Chayv and Tevillah. So then, if aluminum is Chayv, then plastic should also be Chayv. Okay? So then, if you follow what Ramosha says, what Ramosha saying is, the Gemara when it says Kinish Dav means anything with that property is Chayv and Tevillah Midrabanan, so then I understand why aluminum good, and then plastic should also be. Okay, well the problem is, the Ramosha's Yeshiva, MTJ, Shulchan, printed a journal, okay, and Ramosha has, at the end of it says, Ramosha said, no, not Chayv and Tevillah. Plastic is not Chayv and Tevillah. Okay, so make up your mind. I mean, if you believe that Kinish Dav Yeshem Takana means anything that's included, anything that has that property is Chayv and Tevillah D'Rabbanan, so then plastic should also be. And if you think that the Gemara means dafka for glass, it doesn't mean for any material with that property. It means anything that anything. So make up, it has to go one with the other. Okay, so I guess a number of people.
Natural.
What?
Is it some natural materials versus man-made?
What should be the difference?
That's what I'm talking about, the actual material.
Why is
No, it's a drabanan. It's a drabanan of.
Chazal only talking about the actual material.
Okay, so
Why is plastic-
and why is plastic? Like, why is it plastic less natural than glass is? You take something out of the ground. I know that in modern day.
I don't know how to make plastic.
Right, in modern day we say that things that are made out of petroleum are not natural. Of course, it's a joke. What do you think? It came from Mars? I mean, it came from the ground. So it didn't come from no place.
I said everything has a natural source. But say glass, they knew how to make glass.
Yeah,
but they didn't know how to make plastic.
They didn't know how to make aluminum either. So if you say aluminum is included, because they say whatever you'll be able to fix up is included, so then you have to include plastic. You want to say no, only what they had in front of them they include. That's also reasonable. So then don't include aluminum, don't include plastic. You can't have one without the other. Okay, so that was the first. I guess the number of people who either should know their answer or maybe who are close to the family who might tell me the answer. I didn't get a very satisfactory answer. But then, lo and behold, I found that this is the very first journal that issue printed. I don't know how many they printed in the end. But in the second journal, okay, the second one was printed a couple months later. Okay, the second one has the Shulchan for Moshe. Okay, the Shulchan for Moshe, a lot of the parts in the Shulchan that are in this one, that are printed in here, are what's in the Igros Moshe about aluminum, whether it's high in Tevillas or not. Okay, I don't think, maybe I missed it, that the paragraph that I'm about to show you actually appears in the Shulchan that's printed in Igros Moshe. But in this one, he says like this. Okay. In the second one, the first one has quotes from that saying that plastic is not high in Tevillas, and he agrees with that. He doesn't argue that in the second one. But in the second one, he tells us, he says like this. Plastic. That's our question. I'm just telling you that aluminum is higher than Tevillas because it's yesh and hituch. He says, why? Because Chacham only said it on glass. Okay, wait a second. So what about aluminum? He says, no. And this metal that I'm talking about, aluminum is different. What? The hen kroiven yoiser lemine matches mikli zuchuches. Okay, so before I tell you anything, what does that mean? They're closer to metal. It's true. Aluminum is a lot closer to other metals than plastic is. What does that mean? But seemingly, you have to make up your mind. Either Chazal, when they said Midrabanan Yechayev and Tevillah for these things, they meant anything that's like that or not. Well, why would you think it's the other way around? If Chazal would have said that aluminum was higher than Tevillah, I could have understood. We said Chazal said aluminum was higher, but they didn't say plastic. They only said things that are close to this, but they didn't do that. They said glass is higher. Glass is not like metal. So what does that mean? So I don't have a great explanation of what I think he means. Okay. I asked family people who didn't explain to me. Maybe I didn't ask enough of them. But I think what he means, I'm guessing that he means is like this. We look at it that the metal is higher than Tevillah, and then Chazal went ahead and said, and that thing is also higher than Tevillah. They picked something else. They say glass has something like this. Glass is also higher than Tevillah. The way I'm understanding that he's saying like this. They didn't just pick another thing. They said is the group called metal, which has all kinds of properties, like we saw in the Gemara on Shabbos last time, we're going to broaden that group to include not just metal, which has all these properties, but even some of the things that are a little broader than that have some of those properties. And it's stretched so far that it even includes glass also. Okay, they stretched it so far to include, now glass doesn't have all the properties of metal, but they stretched metal far enough to include plastic in it also. I'm sorry. To include glass in it also. So, we only know what they included. They included glass. Okay, so we can't say that they would include plastic because we don't know if it's similar enough that they would have wanted to include it, and we'd say they didn't include it. But when you're stretching the takana, obviously the first thing you're going to pass when you're stretching the takana is going to be aluminum. Okay? Aluminum is much more, when you're stretching yourself, you say metal is broader. It doesn't just mean metals that are rikui pachim, it means a little bit more than that also. So when you're going to stretch it far enough to include glass, and also stretching far, you're going to pass aluminum really quickly. Because aluminum has so many properties that are like metal. Obviously, when the Torah said 6, if you want to make it broader than those 6, you can include more things also. Okay? I'm not sure if that is or is not, but Hezbollah, you can figure it out. According to Moshe, only those 6 are Chayv and Tevillah, and aluminum is only Chayv and Darban. Okay? So I'm going to summarize that. I found one person, there are probably others, who says that aluminum and new metals are not Chayv and Tevillah at all. Okay? He wants to do Tevillah down a bracha to like be machmer, but I'll tell you after this. But most people that I saw said that it's Chayv either Midraisa or Midrabana. Okay? There were many who said it's Midraisa, and many who said Midrabana, like Ramesh's way of saying it. And we, as a rule, again, the shaila of aluminum that's disposable is not for today. It's a different time. Halacha chesed mitzvah. That's not for now. But aluminum, be'etzim, have an aluminum pot, then most people would toilet with a bracha. Okay, so now let's just go through.
Didn't Rabbi Yaakov say to toilet without
Rabbi Yaakov, it's not so clear what the maskana is. There's a letter that I'm reading from. There's something printed in his name. It's not so clear what he said with or without bracha. The way I saw it was that he said, do it with a bracha. But by no means am I sure that that's convinced that that's what he really holds.
I think I'm say for Tevillas Keilim, they bring him down without a bracha.
Okay, so now, we have here metals. I don't know. You can count them. I don't remember how many there are. All these metals, we consider to be metals and chayv and tefillah. Similarly with the Raisa, some would say maybe some of them also drabanan. Okay, we talked about all these. Come out every one of these cases this time or last time. Okay, some of them were last time. These are mixture kind of things. Okay, these are chayv and tefillah with the bracha. These are glass things that are chayv and tefillah. Also with the bracha, they're considered glass. So the simple ones are the drinking glasses and the glass plates. Pyrex we spoke about last time as a borosilicate. It's a special kind of glass, but essentially it's glass. It's at least what we would call white glass. And Corel, we don't have time for it, but there's a number of patents to read about what Corel is made out of. Okay, just for your curiosity, I found it interesting. And the reason why it's called Corel, okay, is because, and I now know how to spell it, is because it's made of two layers of glass, and the inner core with an outer layer, and that's what gives it its special properties. Okay, so it's core L. Okay, the inside is a core of one glass, and the outside is a different kind of glass. But essentially, it's glass. And if you read the patent, I didn't bore you, even though I gave you so many little words there. There are many more words. If you read the patent, you see that basically it's glass. It has other things added into it, but we spoke last time that roiv would be enough to make it chayv and tefillah. So even those other things that are not exactly glass, but the numbers show that it's very clearly roiv glass. Roiv of what we would call glass. So that's not taken seriously from that side. We say when the Gemara says that glass is chayv and tefillah, if I have a glass that can't meet that property, once they said it, then they did it. We try to understand why would they say that, but once they said it, then that chayv for all things like that. And then the ones that, and these are things that don't need tefillah, okay? Things made out of bone and cork and ivory and rubber and styrofoam and wood. All these kind of things are things that don't need tefillah. These are all things that are made out of.
Mug is a material?
So no, you're right. The mug is not a material. I'm sorry. You're right. It's true. On my paper, this is alphabetized. On my paper, mug is first, and that's because I put it on there because a mug is. I use it as an example because it's different than things like China. We're not talking about things, I've said last time, about things that have two layers to them. One that needs tefillah and one that doesn't. Like a piece of china is made out of cheres, it doesn't need tefillah, and has glass, it doesn't need tefillah. That will do it in Mitzvah Shem Aruch, I think.
You don't have a place to be. But one of
Oh, no, my mistake, sorry. It should be on there. It should be on there. So that's what I want to say. The reason why I put on mug onto here is because in a mug, the base is made out of cheres, doesn't need tefillah, and it has just a shellac on the top of it that also doesn't need tefillah. Okay? Different than a piece of china, which is glazed. It has glass on top of it. What's on top of a mug is not glass.
But
No.
the covered glaze is not glass.
The coating on top of a mug is just a shellac, like a paint put on top of it. It's not made out of glass. No, but when you have a piece of china, there the coating that's on top of it is a piece of glass. Okay, we'll get to halacha. I don't know why that's I think it is. When we talk about things with two layers on them.
We'll send you the recording.
It's on our website. Okay, but right now we're talking about things that have either one layer or the whole thing is not like a mug. There's no parts of it that could be chayv and tefillah. The base and the coating are both not chayv and tefillah. If we had one here, I would show you. You would see it yourself. Okay.